So that's why we're continuing part 2 today, because today I want to talk to you more about the practical ways of us feeling the love of Allah in our lives. How are we going to gain more of that feeling? You know, yes, yesterday we did, breathing exercise, be connected, but we can't go around with our eyes closed in our lives all the time. We want to have that feeling of Allah's love more and more in our lives. So how are we going to do that? And also, how can we overcome the barriers that we have in our lives where, I'm really struggling to feel close to Allah with regard to that one thing or this thing or that problem. So it's more of a practical session in that way, but I hope it is as useful, inshallah. So as a quick recap, to describe the attributes of al-Wadood based on the definition of the word al-Wadda, Wadda, just as a quick definition, explanation, it's loyalty. You liking someone so much you're loyal to them, liking and loving them. Number 2, being a companion for them, always together. And number 3, wishing good for them, hoping good for them. They're so special that you're wanting so much for them. You're loyal to them. You're with them all the time. That is Wadood. Love, the love that Allah gives us. And He expresses it to us, that sort of love, through actions and conducts, and the blessings and favors and mercy and guidance that He sends us. In fact, knowing it and feeling it yesterday is very different. And as you felt it yesterday, when you feel the love of Allah cover you completely, as Amina said, you feel like no one can touch this. You feel like very strong, resilient, confident to cope with life. You have everything you need. You feel at peace. And it's from that place that we want to live our lives. How do we bring that into our lives? One of the ways is what we did in the meditation exercise yesterday was just to connect with Allah, to kind of just detach from the problems and detach from what's going on around us and connect with Allah. And one of the ways that you can do that in your life generally is just talk to Allah more. Even if you're thinking you want a cup of tea at iftar time, just making dua and just talking to Allah. Yeah, I really feel like that cup of tea. As Sister Rashida said, Allah has become on this journey her best friend. What do you do with your best friend? You talk to them. You tell them whatever's on your mind, whatever silly thing that comes up in your mind, whatever you want, whatever you fancy. Because often what we do is we talk to ourselves. In our minds, there's a lot of chitter chatter. There's so much conversation. But really, we're just talking to ourselves. We're talking about, what happened. We're replaying something. We're imagining the future. We're thinking about this. We're thinking about that. But there's a lot of talking to ourselves. Now, one of the best ways you can connect with Allah in the practical terms is if you consciously start just talking to Allah instead than talking to yourself. Whatever you want, whatever's coming to your mind. It becomes actually very easy then to turn every worry into a dua and every pain into a dua. Everything that comes to your mind, just take it back to Allah. Be more conscious. This is the month of being conscious of Allah, of gaining closeness to Allah. This is the purpose of Ramadan. So if we can start in practical terms, notice when we're just talking in our own minds to ourselves, but take that to Allah. Because you won't always be able to, you'll fall into it out of habit. We're human, we will. But if we can take that speech and take that to Allah and start talking to Allah more and more and more about every little thing, nothing is too big and too small. Nothing is too silly. You will find a greater connection there with Allah, just on everyday level. The second thing that we struggle with in that connection with Allah is when it comes to our problems. So say, for example, I've noticed, because the key here is when you as you've seen, as we're learning the names of Allah, is when you submit to Allah, when you let go, when you hand it over. Now, we've all said, we've felt a lot lighter, we've let go of a lot of things. Well, what is that action? That action of letting go, the action of forgiving, the action of handing it over, that is submission. A Muslim submits. What we're really doing here is submitting to Allah. Even when we're accepting things aren't the way we want them to be, we're accepting they are as Allah decrees them to be. So in our problems now, because it's easy for the cup of tea scenario, but what about in your problems? If you find yourself talking to yourself a lot about the problem, trying to figure out a solution, trying to understand why it happened, trying to figure out what you need to do now to solve it, we often go into fixing mode. We're always trying to fix our problems. But actually, sisters, we're not in control of anything. Allah fixes all of your problems. Yes, we tie our camels. But when we can recognize that Allah is the one who will fix it, it becomes very clear what your tying the camel looks like, what your next step is. When it becomes clear, when you can recognize that it's Allah who raises your children, not you. You're doing your part, but Allah raises your children. It becomes very easy to hand that stress over to Him, and you just do your bit the best that you can. You ask Him for beneficial knowledge that will help you. You ask Him for His help, but you don't take the pressure that you have to raise them. Because if Allah took you away from them, they will continue to grow up and continue their journey because it's Allah who raises them. In the same way, when we become really focused on, the results, we've got to achieve this, we've got to do this, I've got to get this done. When we become really fixated on the result, we forget that it is Allah who gives the result. You tie your camel, but the result is never from you. Like yesterday, I tied my camel. I shared with you from my heart what came to me. But I have no bearing on the result. That was from Allah, from Allah to each of you. I don't know what you're going to get. It's Allah who gives. But when we think I have to achieve a result, I have to get somewhere, we become really consumed and focused on that, and it becomes harder to connect with Allah. So the area that you might find that you are really struggling with the most might be the area that you have forgotten to hand over to Allah. We don't do it on purpose. So on that note, I'd like you each, sisters, to write in the chat box, which part of your life do you find that you struggle with the most? Okay, so you don't have to give me details. It's, you can just say parenting or a particular aspect of parenting or marriage or your work. What is the one area in your life you struggle with the most? Can you please put it in the chat box? Okay, struggling to balance work and family life. Yeah, one sister says her daughter-in-law. Now one says time. Now one, few more ladies. Parenting, yes. Managing your emotions, children, forgiving yourself, having patience with your partner and parenting. Okay, keep going, ladies. Trying to make children and husbands and people around you, children, husband and people around you understand. Struggling with with waswas and can't be bothered attitude. Struggling with relationship with teenage kids. Struggling with keeping everyone happy. Struggling with children and partners. I keep saying partners and husbands, sorry, partner. Struggling with yourself. Struggling with your workload. Struggling with your career progression. Struggling to raise kids alone without husband. Now, I'll make it easy for all of you sisters. Okay, so of all of these now that you've written down for you, what do you actually have control over? What is actually in your hands? What is within your control? Yourself. But hardly anyone said they had a problem with themselves. Their problem was with everyone else around them. You see, sisters, Allah says He will not change the condition of a person until they change within themselves. What does that tell you? It tells you two things. One, that Allah is in control of your condition, of your circumstances, of your children, of your husband, of your spouse, of your work results, of your of all of the external things. Allah is in control of those. Allah is ultimately in control of you, but He has given you permission to control yourself. But Allah is in control. What if you could hand that over to Al-Wakil? What if you could hand over the behavior and the understanding and the attitudes, and you hand over all of those to Allah? What if you take a moment now to acknowledge, it's not in my control, it's in your control, Allah. It's under your guardianship. It's under your all of everything, all of my problems. They're really in your hands. All of the things I would want to be different, I can't do anything about those. What if I just let it go? Can you submit that they're not in your control, so it's not for you to fix or change? You can only change yourself. You can only focus on getting closer to Allah. You can only focus on being the change that you want to see. So if you want to see a better attitude, from those around you, have the best attitude you can have. If you want to see less anger in those around you, focus on controlling your anger. If you can let go of what you're not in control, what you will find is a deeper connection with Allah, because these things that you're trying to control or change that are not in your control, they will act as a barrier between you and Allah. You will find that it's really hard to make dua for those things sometimes, or to really just let it go with Allah. Like, yeah, I know I should make dua for it, or I know I should let it go, but, and I can't. You'll find that becomes quite difficult, because when we are trying to control what we can't control, it becomes a barrier between you and Allah, and feeling that love. That love is always there, but when do you feel it? If you want to feel it more and more, we need to submit more and more. Yes, Samia says we still need to make our efforts. Of course we have to tie our camels. But what about raising your children, knowing that Allah raises them, but you're still there doing your bit? It takes the pressure off to get the result. Now all you need to do is just do your bit. What can you do? What is in your power to do? You want more love? Give more love. You want less anger? Be less angry. You want more compassion? Show more compassion. This is all that's in our control to do. But when we consume ourselves with trying to fix something that is not in our control, it causes a barrier between you and Allah. And that's where you will struggle to find that connection with Allah, that love of Allah that you felt yesterday. Why you will struggle to find that in the part of your life that consumes you is because perhaps we're trying to control things that aren't in our control. So give, yes, Lubna says, so give what you want to get yourself. Yes. Amina says, how do you mend a broken heart? By knowing actually that nobody can break your heart, because your heart is with Allah. If Allah has tested you, if you have been hurt by someone that isn't giving you what you want, know that Allah is always giving you what you need. And you may have needed that disappointment to look for Allah. You may have needed that broken heart to turn back to Allah. Allah will never break your heart, sister. Never, ever. He's so careful with it. But He gives you what you need. What we're doing is, as Amina says, we're taking our hearts back to Allah, back to His loving hands. Amina. So, in what I'm sharing with you, sisters, what do you see now? I'm going to wait for a few of you to chat in the chat box, please. Can you find the barrier between you and Allah that's been there? Samia says, Allah will never break your heart, but we can die from a broken heart. Is this because of lack of belief in Allah? People do die, yes, by the qadr of Allah. How? Allah knows best. Allahu alam. But what we do know is that when you can't accept the decree of Allah, if you can't accept if Allah has taken someone from you, then yes, you may become very, very sad. How that impacts your heart and your body, Allah knows. What else, sisters? What else came up for you when I asked you about bringing Allah to your problem? Arifa says, I see that I had to go through that difficulty to return to Him because that's what I needed. Alhamdulillah. Lubna says, our heart is never broken. We could feel peace of mending it by giving what we want for ourselves. Yeah. Actually, what if your heart wasn't broken? What if actually Allah just turned you back towards Him? Then did you lose anything? Or did you gain the best thing in the world? Sister Nahida says, for me, I feel that through my test, I have distanced myself from Allah. Okay, so that's exactly what I'm saying. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair for being honest about that. That when we can't come to terms with what's happened in our test, when we can't accept it, it becomes a distance between us, a barrier. Because we can't accept, why did this happen? Sister Nahida, did you want to put a little bit more information? Maybe I can help you with that, inshallah, here. Sister Samia says, I definitely became more peaceful knowing that Allah is in control and will never forget our children. Yeah, you take a lot of pressure off yourself when you leave things with Allah. You do your bit, but you leave the result with Allah. You leave changing people to Allah. Sister Zahra said, yes, our hearts do not break, but they can ache. Yes, the pain of not feeling loved by creation is very, very painful. The pain of thinking that Allah has let you down is very painful. Absolutely, it is. Okay, so I hope that is useful for you. I'm conscious of time, I'm just going to move on to understand why we don't feel that closeness with Allah all the time that we felt yesterday. It's really important to understand that. It's because we are consumed in our problem solving of the problem that we become consumed in that rather than leaving it to Allah. So if you find that you're in that state where your problem's going round and round in your head and it's affecting you and you can't let it go, then leave it, let it go. Let it go to Allah. You know, when you keep thinking about it so much, you just don't want to let it go in your head. That's exactly what you need to do. You need to do exactly that. You need to let it go and leave it with Allah. You know, there's certain things that I've been worried about recently, like how am I going to take care of my mom, etc. And then I realized, actually, Allah, you're taking care of all of us. Why do I need to worry about how I'm going to manage that? And I just handed it over to Al-Wakil. I was like, actually, I'm not even doing it. It was an illusion that I'm doing it. You are ultimately taking care of all of us. You know, or the other day I was praying and my daughter was jumping off the sofa and I was so scared that she was going to hit herself. And actually there was a moment where I was kind of focused on her instead of my salah, and I just let it go. I was just like, oh, well, you're the one in control. You're the one, you know, I leave it with you. I just leave her to you. And so more and more when I find myself kind of suddenly getting quite consumed or worried or, you know, anxious or feeling like heavy, that's my cue to let it go. Just let it go to Allah. Hand it over. And you will feel that peace and that love again. It's submission. Letting go is submission. The true meaning of Islam, as Amina says. All right? Okay. I know that's a deep topic, but I did want to cover that so that you understand why you feel connected to Allah sometimes and why you feel disconnected. But to have a close relationship with Allah Wadood, it's to take all your concerns to Him, talk to Him about your problems, share your pain with Him, and leave it with Him. That's how you'll develop a deeper connection with Allah Wadood, knowing He loves you. Because you know what, you can hand your problems over to someone who doesn't care, but to hand it over to someone who loves you the most and is taking care of you the most, who is there with you always, never leaving you for one moment, there's such a relief that comes when you hand it over to the one who loves you the most. You can just relax in that. Okay? Second way that you can bring our Wadood into your life, yes, alhamdulillah, as Nazmira says, it's liberating once you submit to Allah. The anxiety just falls off. And when you hold on to the pain, you cause your own suffering. And we don't realize we're doing that. But that's what the awareness that we're hoping to bring through these sessions, where we can let it go. Okay, second point, love al-Wadood above everything else and anyone else. Now that's something that a lot of people struggle with. I used to struggle with it so much myself because I really didn't know Allah. I had a lot of barriers because I didn't accept much of my life. And because of that, I found I loved people more than Allah. But I started making that dua, the dua that was in the group yesterday. And I'll forward it again. But it was so beautiful, alhamdulillah. Amina, which one is it?
It is.
Where is it?
Allahumma inni as'aluka hubbak wa hubba man yuhibbuk wa hubba amali yuqarribu ila hubbak. Oh Allah, I ask you for your love and the love of those who love you and for the love of every action which will bring me closer to your love.
Ameen. Alhamdulillah. And I started making that dua and I started to feel the change. So if you recognize, sisters, that you're in a place where actually, if you're honest with yourself, you're more attached to the people around you than Allah, then start making that dua. It really did change things for me, you know. Sister Amina will put the reference up, inshallah, in this group as well. Please, Amina. But yeah, if you can start prioritizing Allah more in that way, seeking His love, then you will feel His love. Because Allah says, if you come to Him, He will run to you. So we've got to go seeking it. Now, one of the ways that you can seek it is you can follow the Prophet ﷺ, because Allah said, if you love Allah, then follow me. Allah will love you and forgive you. Sorry, Allah said to the Prophet, say, O Prophet, to the people, if you love Allah, then follow me. Allah will love you and forgive you your sins. And that's Surah Al-Imran, ayah 31. So what Allah is telling us there is, if we follow the Prophet ﷺ, if we follow his sunnah, if we do the extras, then Allah will love us and we will feel more of that love. So even the other day I was praying and I finished my sunnah and I thought, Shall I pray my nafil as well? Should I do a bit extra? And I thought, yeah, because I want Allah's love. The more I do, the more I will, inshallah, come closer to Allah, the more of His love I will feel. And now that gave me a new motivation for my ibadah, to do more. Because when you want more and more of that love, you want to feel it more and more. You know, rather than focusing our efforts on always just drawing closer to people so that they can give us what we need, we could take that and completely take that to Allah and actually seek Allah's love. Do more. Do more of the voluntary acts. Do the extras. Follow the sunnahs. Learn the du'as. You know, there's so much more we could do. And I don't mean this to say to overwhelm you, but if ever you've been putting off learning more du'as or doing more, don't put it off, sisters. You know, take one step. Just increase one thing, you know, in small steps, but just start increasing your effort. And the things that you've been putting off, don't put them off. Do them. Do them with the intention and the motivation and the drive that it will bring you closer to Allah and you will feel more of Allah's love in your life. Something else that you can do is to recite Surah Ikhlas more and more. Because if you want Allah's love, love talking about Him. Surah Ikhlas is one of the most comprehensive surahs describing Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, He appointed a man in charge of an army unit who led them in prayer. He also always concluded his recitation with Surah Ikhlas. Upon their return to Al-Madinah, they mentioned this to the Prophet, the Messenger of Allah, who said, Ask him why he does that. He was asked, and the man said, This surah contains the attributes of Allah, the Gracious, and I love to recite it. And so the Messenger of Allah then told him, well, tell him that Allah loves him. So start to love reciting Surah Ikhlas. And in fact, just so that we can understand how it describes Allah, I'll read it and then I'll explain the translation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. Say, O Prophet, He is Allah, the One, Allah, the Sustainer, needed by all. He has never had offsprings, nor was he born, nor is there to him any equivalent. By understanding the meaning of Surah Ikhlas, you will understand actually that Allah is not comparable to anyone else. So whoever's love you're seeking, it's never going to be comparable to the love that you will get from Allah. Whoever's help you're seeking, it will never be comparable to the help of Allah. Whatever results you're trying to achieve on your own will never be comparable to the results Allah can give you. He is not like us. There is no comparison. Because sometimes we do that. We almost still look, for what we can get from Allah in others, yes. But when we know that what we can get from Allah, yes, we can get something from others, from those around us. We can get something from our efforts, but it will never compare to what you will get from Allah. And when you remind yourself of that and you love reading Surah Ikhlas, Allah will love you. Because you're reminding yourself of who we are and who Allah is. And as you do, just remember, the problem that you're holding on to, leave it to the One. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, the One. Leave it to the One. One last point, because we're going over time. Let your love be for the sake of Al-Wadood. Now, I did a session on what does loving for the sake of Allah mean. What it means is loving someone because they love Allah, loving someone because they fear Allah, loving someone because they strive for the good and they forbid the evil. It doesn't mean loving them for what they can give you. See, sometimes that's where we get caught. We love someone for what they give us, for how they make us feel, for what we think they can become. But really loving someone for the sake of Allah is loving them because of their love for Allah. So look for those around you in your loved ones. Look for how they love Allah, and then love them because they love Allah. Love them because they fear Allah. Love them because they do good. And don't make it about what they give you. Make it about what they do for Allah and their relationship with Allah, of what we can see, because we can never see that. And by loving others for the sake of Allah, Allah will love us more and more. This is a beautiful kind of love that we can have for another human being, even when you don't know them intimately, as we don't know each other here intimately. So those are the kind of practical points, sisters, that I wanted to bring today. Tell me something that, on a closing note before I close, one takeaway from you, one thing that you're going to change or do more of, or do differently. And I'd like to hear from each of you, please, before I close the session. So one thing that you're going to do differently or take away and bring into your life. Not rely on others' love. Yes, thank you. Love more. Alhamdulillah, beautiful. Discuss more with Allah. Alhamdulillah. Be love. Yes, alhamdulillah. Do more voluntary ibadah. Alhamdulillah. Not to worry, as I'm not the one who owns the hearts. Yes, alhamdulillah. Keeping close to Allah. Love everything and everyone for the sake of Allah. Yes, alhamdulillah. Love more and have more patience. Trust in Allah's plan. Do everything for Allah, loving others for the sake of Allah. We'll read Surah Ikhlas, especially today. Yes, inshallah. Not to focus on fixing your problems, but to rely on Allah. Thank you, alhamdulillah. Talk to Allah about your sorrows. Yes. Not to worry that because Allah loves you. Learn more du'as. Try to be our best for the sake of Allah. Do everything for the sake of Allah and leave it in His hands. Have more patience and let go. Also act the way I want to be treated. Alhamdulillah. Patience with everything and everyone. Talk to Allah more. Al-Wali, He is our loving friend. I know, and when you bring the love and the friendship together, subhanAllah, it just takes it to another place, subhanAllah. Just so much comfort. To read the du'as I mentioned and memorize them, inshallah, yes. And leave your affairs to Allah. Alhamdulillah. Those are great takeaway points, sisters. Alhamdulillah. Because we want to come to these sessions and we want something to change in our lives. It's not just about having this great feeling of feeling close to Allah in this moment, and then we go back to our lives and then we're struggling. What we want to do is take steps now, tie our camel. This knowledge has come to us for a reason. We have all been chosen by Allah to be together here by His permission and by His decree. So this knowledge has come to us, and we want to take something away. We want to do something differently. We want to tie our camel a bit more, make a bit more effort. Letting things go actually isn't much effort. It's really a huge relief, right? Doing things to increase Allah's love in our life, you get so much more back. So, alhamdulillah, I'm glad that you've benefited. May that continue for us. May Allah show us how else we can continue to grow in our own lives, in our own circumstances, so that we can grow closer to Him. And I'll hand over to Dr. Amina, who wants to add something for us. and then we'll close inshallah. Jazakallah khair, sisters.
Jazakallah khair. Yes, Amina. Yeah. I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to
yes, sorry,
prolong
ladies.
it. Sorry, sisters. do forgive us. Something that you you said that sort of struck me, and you said, if you're struggling with someone, look for ways that you can see that they're loving Allah, or that their love is apparent. And sometimes the person that we're struggling with, it may be really difficult to find something that actually in their behavior, they're not showing the love of Allah. And that may be why it's frustrating you. So a lot of you mentioned children, or teenage children, especially, right? Part of our frustration might be that actually they're not within what Allah's wanting from them. And really in that moment, my own takeaway from that is, well then, rather than becoming frustrated, wouldn't you become more compassionate, knowing that they are missing out on the love of Allah? Knowing for whatever reason, they're under some sort of fog. They're not seeing Al-Wadood in their life. And if we have experienced a small iota of Allah's love through understanding Al-Wadood, then doesn't it bring compassion for you, to you, to those that may be struggling in whatever way? So that's just something I wanted to add, Amina.
It's beautiful, sis. Alhamdulillah. It's true, because sometimes we struggle to find that, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. Every one of us, we're on our journey with Allah. Every one of us. And sometimes we've even had our times in our journey where we've been far from Allah, but Allah brought us back. So when you have that worry, when you struggle, turn that into a dua for guidance for them.
Yeah. Because when you're not at peace, by default, you're not with Allah. And those that are not with Allah, they're really struggling. Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
May As-Salam bring us all to His peace.
Ameen.
Ameen. Okay, on that note, I will end it, sisters. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sisters.